Snow came down like judgment, hard and unending, swallowing the cattle road until it vanished beneath white drifts. Etta Calder knelt in it, skirts soaked through, fingers numb to pain, knocking on the last door she had strength to reach. The wood was warm beneath her knuckles. Smoke curled from the chimney. Someone was home. Still the door did not open. She knocked again. The sound was thin, desperate. Her breath tore from her chest in sharp clouds. When the door finally cracked, a man's face appeared, sour, wary, already decided. His eyes slid past her torn shawl, the frost in her lashes, the blood darkening the snow around her boots. "Road's full tonight," he said. "Best move on." "I can't," Etta whispered. Her tongue felt thick, useless. "Please." The door shut. The bolt slid home. Laughter drifted from inside, then silence. Etta sagged against the wall, her cheek pressed to the frozen boards, shame burning hotter than the cold. She pushed herself upright again because the snow did not care whether she lived or died. She stumbled back onto the road. Her boots split clear through, filled with ice water at every step. Once she had owned land. Once she had been Mrs. Calder, spoken to with care. Now she was widow, whispered about in saloons and stores. Thief's wife. Bad luck. A woman folk crossed the street to avoid. A rider passed her without slowing. He spat into the snow and said, "Should have known when to lay down." His horse snorted steam and vanished into the storm. Etta walked until her legs buckled. She fell beside a fence half buried in snow, wire singing softly in the wind. Blood seeped from cracks in her heels, staining the white beneath her. She pressed her palms into the drift and tried to pray, but all that came was her husband's face, gray and still, and the sound of dirt hitting a coffin lid. Hoofbeats approached again, slower this time. A horse emerged from the storm like a dark thought given shape. The rider reined in sharply when he saw her. He did not rush forward. He studied the scene, the blood, the fence, the way her body folded inward as if already preparing to disappear. He dismounted with care, boots crunching. He was broad, built like land worn down by weather, his coat patched and honest. His beard was flecked with snow. His eyes, steady and gray, met hers without flinching. "You hurt," he said. Etta tried to stand and failed. "I'll move," she said, though she had nowhere to go. "Don't," the man replied. He looked up at the sky, gauging the storm. "You'll freeze solid in an hour." She waited for the bargain, the price. It did not come. "My cabin's close," he said. "Get into it. Storm's got no mercy tonight." The words were plain. They landed heavy. Etta stared at him, suspicion warring with exhaustion. Then her body decided for her. She lurched past him, nearly falling again. He caught her elbow, firm but distant, and guided her to the horse. The cabin crouched low against the wind, half hidden by drifts. Light glowed faint through a single window. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and boiled beans. The warmth struck her like a blow. Her knees gave out. She collapsed near the hearth, shaking. The man barred the door and set another log on the fire. He moved without hurry, as if calm were a rule he lived by. He knelt and worked at her boots, fingers quick, eyes fixed on the leather, not her face. When he peeled them away, ice spilled onto the floor. Her socks were soaked through, her feet raw and bleeding. He sucked in a quiet breath. "Name's Silas Harlan," he said. "Sit still." Etta nodded, tears streaking down her face before she could stop them. She hated that more than the pain. "Etta Calder," she said. Widow felt unnecessary to say. It hung in the room on its own. Silas wrapped her feet in cloth and slid a tin cup toward her. Steam rose from it. "Drink." She did. The heat burned, then steadied her. He set a bowl of beans within reach and turned away, giving her his back. That kindness cracked something open. She ate like someone who had learned hunger too well. Outside, the wind screamed. Something howled in the distance. Wolves, maybe, or just the storm finding its voice. Hoofbeats sounded again, close now. Men shouted, laughter sharp and ugly. Etta stiffened, fear flooding back. Silas went to the door and dropped the bar into place. He did not ask her anything. He did not look at her. He only stood there, solid as the wall itself, as if whatever came next would have to reckon with him first. The voices passed, fading into the storm, and the cabin settled into a fragile quiet. Silas remained by the door a long moment, listening, jaw set, before he turned back. Firelight cut his face into hard lines and softer shadows. He looked older then, burdened, as if winters had stacked one atop another without pause. Etta drew her shawl tighter, aware of how small she seemed in his space, how easily he could have chosen differently out there on the road. "I won't trouble you long," she said. The words tasted like pride she could no longer afford. Come morning I'll be gone. Silas shook his head once. Morning ain't promised. He returned to the hearth and set another log, coaxing the flames higher. Sparks leapt, bright and brief. Outside, snow battered the walls like fists. Inside, the heat held barely. Etta leaned back against the rough planks, eyelids heavy, the ache in her bones sinking deeper now that she was safe enough to feel it. She wondered what sort of man let a stranger in without asking her sins, and what price that mercy might demand when the storm finally broke. Snow pressed close, listening as if the night waited. Morning came slow and colorless, as if the storm had wrung the world dry. Etta woke on the cabin floor with her cheek pressed to a folded coat that smelled of smoke and horse. For one stunned moment she did not know where she was. Then pain returned to her feet, sharp and real, and memory followed close behind. Silas Harlan stood at the table, back to her, pouring coffee into chipped tin cups. The cabin looked smaller in daylight. Its walls bowed inward from years of wind. Every object had a purpose and nothing more. There was no softness here, no space meant for a woman. You're awake, he said without turning. That's good. Etta pushed herself upright, wincing. I can work, she said quickly, words tumbling over one another. I won't be a burden. I know how to clean, cook, tend animals. I won't. Silas set a cup in her hands. Drink first. She obeyed. The coffee was bitter and thin, but it steadied her. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the land hushed beneath fresh snow. It was beautiful in a cruel way. Etta wondered how many people had died admiring it too late. You can stay till the road's clear, Silas said. Then you decide. The offer sounded simple. It was not. Staying meant being seen. It meant judgment delayed, not erased. But Etta nodded. Pride could wait. Survival could not. She tried to stand and nearly fell. Silas caught her elbow again, the same careful grip. He set her back down and slid a pair of mended boots toward her. Rawhide stitched the split seams. The work was rough but strong. I fixed what I could, he said. Etta stared at them. Her throat tightened. You didn't have to. He shrugged. Did anyway. She wore the boots like a promise she was afraid to believe. When she stood this time, she did not fall. That small victory felt enormous. The days that followed tested her resolve. The ranch was poorer than she had first seen, stripped to its bones by hard seasons. Fences leaned like tired men. The barn roof sagged. There were cattle, but fewer than there should have been. Each morning, Silas rose before light. Etta rose with him, though her feet screamed and her hands split open in the cold. She failed often. She spilled milk in the snow and cried in frustration. She burned bread black as coal. She dropped a bucket down the well and had to haul water by hand until her arms shook. Each mistake cut at her deeper than hunger ever had. She waited for Silas's temper, his disappointment. It never came. He corrected without comment, fixed what broke, and moved on. His silence was not unkind, but it was heavy. It made her feel every failure more sharply, as if she were alone with them. On the fourth morning, a boy appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He was thin, all elbows and knees, with Silas's gray eyes set in a softer face. This is Jonah, Silas said. My sister's boy. Jonah stared at Etta openly. You the lady from the snow? Etta managed a smile. I am. Jonah grinned, unafraid. You look better standing. From then on, she was never entirely alone. Jonah followed her as she worked, asked questions, pointed out her mistakes with innocent honesty. He told her about his dead mother without ceremony, about the winters that scared him, about how Silas never sang but hummed when he thought no one listened. One afternoon, Etta noticed the boy's coat was torn at the elbow. She took it from him gently and patched it with thread she had carried since before everything fell apart. The pattern came from memory, her mother's hands guiding hers long ago. When Jonah pulled the coat on, his eyes shone. Silas saw the stitching later. He did not speak. That night, Etta found his spare gloves placed beside her bedroll. She wore them the next morning without comment. Word travels even in snowbound places. A cattle buyer named Jedediah Crow rode in before the week was out, his coat fine and his smile sharp. He leaned against the fence and looked Etta up and down like a tally he didn't trust. Well, he drawled. If it ain't Calder's widow. The name struck like a slap. Jonah went still. Silas stepped between them. She's got a name, Silas said. Crow chuckled. So did her husband. Didn't help him none. Etta felt the old shame rise, hot and choking. I'm just passing through, she said. Crow's eyes gleamed. Bad luck tends to linger. Silas's voice cut in low and final. You're done here. Crow spat into the snow. We'll see. He rode off, leaving the cold sharper than before. That night, Etta lay awake, listening to the wind press against the walls. She thought of the road, of doors closing, of how easy it would be for Silas to decide she wasn't worth the trouble. Morning came anyway. Work waited. Jonah laughed when she finally managed bread that didn't burn. Silas nodded once, approval quiet but real. Still, the land resisted her. The place did not want her, and she knew it. Yet each small kindness, each shared silence, rooted her a little deeper. When she stood at the fence at dusk, watching the sky bruise purple over the snow, Silas stood beside her without remark. Their shoulders did not touch, but the space between them felt deliberate, held. Etta understood then that staying would cost her something too. Not money. Not labor. Oh, she would have to risk wanting a place that might yet send her away. She tightened her mended boots in the snow and stayed where she was, breathing in the cold, letting it harden her resolve as the sun slipped behind the hills. The storm returned without warning, not with fury at first but with a quiet resolve that felt more dangerous. Snow began to fall at dusk, thick and steady, softening the world until sound itself seemed buried. Silas watched the sky darken through the cabin window, jaw set, measuring the weight of what was coming. Etta felt it in her bones before the wind rose, a deep ache that carried memory with it. Some storms arrived loud. Others came to take their time. By nightfall Jonah was coughing. At first it sounded small, a dry rasp swallowed back between breaths. Etta noticed before Silas did, because she had learned to listen for what people tried to hide. She knelt beside the boy as he sat by the fire, his cheeks flushed too bright against pale skin. "You cold?" she asked. Jonah shook his head. "Hot." That was wrong. Etta pressed the back of her hand to his forehead. Fever burned there, sharp and sudden. Her stomach tightened. Silas crossed the room in 2 strides. He crouched, worry breaking through his usual restraint. "You sick?" Jonah nodded now, eyes glassy. "Hurts to breathe." Outside, the wind began to howl, rattling the shutters like fists demanding entry. Snow slammed sideways, erasing what little path remained to the road. The nearest doctor lay miles away, unreachable even in good weather. Silas knew it. Etta saw the knowledge land in him like a blow. She did not wait for permission. "Get water," she said. Her voice surprised them both, steady and sure. "Snow not from the barrel. Fresh." Silas moved at once. Etta stripped Jonah's coat away, eased him down near the fire, and loosened his shirt. She remembered nights like this from her childhood, remembered her mother's hands, remembered fear beaten back by action. She soaked cloths, cooled his skin, whispered to him when his breathing hitched. She did not stop moving. Stopping would have meant thinking. Jonah's fever climbed as the storm worsened. The wind found every weakness in the cabin, slipping through cracks, moaning low and constant. Silas paced until Etta snapped at him to sit and hold the boy's hand. He did, gripping tight as if sheer will might anchor Jonah to the world. Hours dragged by. The fire burned low, then lower. Etta fed it, her hands trembling with exhaustion. She brewed a bitter tea from what little she found in Silas's stores, praying memory served her right. Jonah thrashed, cried out for his mother once, then fell silent, breath shallow and uneven. That was when Silas broke. He turned away, shoulders hunched, one hand braced against the wall. Etta saw the fear he hid from everyone else, raw and unguarded. She crossed the room and touched his arm. He flinched, then stilled. "He's strong," she said. "So are you. Sit with him. Let me work." Silas nodded once, shame and gratitude tangled in his eyes. He did not argue again. Near dawn the fever broke. Jonah's breathing eased, the harsh rattle softening into something like sleep. Etta sagged beside him, her strength finally spent. The room swayed. She did not remember falling. She woke to warmth and the steady crackle of the fire. She lay in Silas's chair, his coat tucked around her shoulders. Her head throbbed. Across the room Jonah slept, color returned to his face. Relief flooded her so hard it hurt. Silas stood watching her, his eyes rimmed red with exhaustion. "You saved him," he said. The words were plain but his voice was not. "I didn't know what to do." Etta swallowed. "You did. You stayed." Something shifted between them then, subtle but irrevocable. The storm raged on outside, but inside the cabin, a fragile calm took hold. Days passed snowbound. Jonah recovered slowly, clinging to Etta like a burr. Silas watched them from a distance at first, as if afraid to intrude on something sacred. He fixed fences when the wind allowed, chopped wood until his shoulders ached. At night, they shared coffee by the fire, silence companionable rather than strained. Etta learned the rhythms of the place, the way Silas moved through his days, the careful economy of his words. She learned his kindness was not loud but constant like a pulse. He learned she did not break as easily as the world seemed to expect. One afternoon, as the storm finally loosened its grip, they worked together mending a section of fence half buried in snow. The cold bit hard. Etta's fingers numbed and she fumbled the wire. Silas reached to steady her hand. Their fingers brushed bare skin to bare skin. Neither pulled away at once. Etta looked up. Silas was already watching her. The moment passed, quiet and heavy, but it left something in its wake, a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. The peace did not last. Crow returned with the clearing skies, riding in with 2 men and papers folded neat in his pocket. He spoke of debts and claims, of land that could be taken if certain stories were believed. He let his gaze linger on Etta as he spoke, a thin smile playing at his lips. "Trouble follows some folks," he said. "Ain't that right, Mrs. Calder?" Etta felt the weight of the past press close. She saw Silas stiffen, saw Jonah step nearer to her without thinking. The storm outside had tested their bodies. This one would test their resolve. Silas's voice was low. "You're done here." Crow smiled wider. "Not yet." As the men rode off, leaving threat hanging in the cold air, Etta knew the hardest trial was still ahead. She stood in the snow, boots planted firm, and did not step back. Whatever came next, she would face it standing, not kneeling. Winter loosened its grip reluctantly, as if offended by the idea of being survived. Snow still lay heavy in the low places, crusted and gray, but the wind no longer cut like a blade. It only watched. Etta felt that watchfulness as she stood beside the corral, the ground softening under her boots, the sky pale and undecided. Survival, she had learned, did not mean safety. It only meant the chance to be tested again. Crow returned 3 days later, this time with intention carried openly. He rode up with 2 men and a folded paper that looked far too clean for the land it threatened. Jonah saw them first and ran for the cabin, fear quick and sharp in his small body. Silas came out with his coat on, already braced, as though he had been waiting since the last hoofbeat faded days before. "This don't need to be ugly," Crow called, dismounting. "Just business." Etta stepped forward before Silas could answer. Her heart hammered, but her voice did not waver. "You're lying." Crow smiled. "Careful, widow. Folks don't much care what you say." Silas glanced at her then, a question in his eyes. Etta nodded once. She was tired of being carried by storms that weren't hers to begin with. "The papers are false," she said. "You're using my husband's name to scare him." Crow's smile thinned. "Your husband stole cattle. Everyone knows that." "Yes," Etta said. The word cut the air clean. Silence fell hard around them. Even the horses shifted uneasily. "He did. He stole to feed men who were already starving. He meant to pay it back. He never got the chance." Crow scoffed. "Stories don't change the law." Silas spoke then, his voice steady but edged with something new. "Neither do lies." Crow unfolded the paper and held it out. "This land's forfeit. Debt don't die with a man." Etta took a step closer, the snow wet beneath her boots. "Then take me," she said. "I'll go." "Leave them be." Jonah cried out her name. Silas's hand closed around her wrist, firm and certain. "No." Crow's eyes flicked between them, interest sharpening. "That's your choice, Harlan. She brings trouble." Silas did not release her. She brought truth. The moment stretched, brittle as ice about to break. Crow looked around, gauging the ground, the witnesses. The storm had drawn others close, neighbors riding in to see what might come of it. Whispers moved through the cold air. Someone muttered about fairness. Someone else spoke Jonah's name. The boy stepped forward, small shoulders squared. "She saved my life." The words were simple. They landed heavier than any accusation. Crow's mouth opened, then closed. He laughed, sharp and hollow. "A child's gratitude don't weigh much." "It weighs enough," Silas said. "So does mine." Crow folded the paper slowly. "This ain't over." "It is here," Silas replied. "You ride out now." Crow held his gaze, then spat into the thawing snow and turned away. The men followed, their horses uneasy, as if they sensed something had shifted beyond paper and threat. When they were gone, the land seemed to breathe. Etta realized she was shaking. Silas pulled her close without thinking, his coat warm, his heart strong against her cheek. She did not pull away. That night, they sat by the fire, Jonah asleep between them on the floor. The flames burned steady, fed by what Silas had saved against hard times. Outside, Water dripped from eaves, the sound gentle and strange after so much howling wind. "You didn't have to do that," Etta said softly. Silas stared into the fire. "Yes," he said. "I did." She waited, giving him space. He had learned to speak when ready. "I built this place to be alone," he went on. "Didn't reckon on keeping much more than that. Then you came in with the storm. And ruined it," she said, trying to smile. He shook his head. "Made it worth holding." The words settled between them, simple and sure. Etta felt tears rise, not from pain this time, but from something like relief. She had been bracing for loss so long she had forgotten how heavy hope could feel. Spring came quietly. Snow retreated inch by inch, leaving mud and promise behind. Etta worked beside Silas as if she had always belonged there. Jonah laughed more, his voice carrying across the fields. The fences stood straighter. The cattle grew restless with new grass. One morning, Etta paused where the fence met the road, the place she had fallen months before. The snow was gone now. In its place, she drove a new post into the earth, her arms steady, her breath even. Silas watched from the porch, Jonah at his side. When she finished, she stood and wiped her hands on her skirt. She did not look back at the road. She looked toward the cabin, toward the life taking shape in small, stubborn ways. Silas met her halfway. He did not speak. He only reached for her hand, rough fingers closing around hers, grounding them both. The land stretched wide and uncertain before them, but it no longer felt empty. Winter had taken much. It always did. But it had left something behind too, something rooted deep enough to endure the seasons yet to come.